Hello and thank you for joining us in today's episode of the GrowVC Everyone Funding Startups podcast. Starting off, let's look at our member highlight from our funding community. Today, that's a startup called Rollinglobe. Rollinglobe is a next-generation travel guide. The startup focuses on the large and growing youth tourism market. In terms of the future, this sounds very exciting, and we can follow Rollinglobe's progress in our community as well as on rollinglobe.com. Now let's continue on with our main discussion topic for this episode. And in our recent episodes, we've been talking about the changing world and the potential implications on our tomorrow. And today we're joined by a true citizen of the world who's seen many different dimensions and been active on many different fronts all over. So Paul, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
I love the fact that you called me a citizen of the world. I get that a lot, but it's true that since I was born in Switzerland, so I'm Swiss. My father is Greek, hence my name, Paul Papadimitriou. My mother's from Finland, where you are right now. I lived in Japan, the Philippines, and now I'm based in Cyprus. That makes it a lot tough, sounding like a citizen of the world. But I don't really feel that I am, to be honest. So what do? I'm a VP and principal for Constellation Research. We're a group of analysts, mostly based in the US. I deal mostly with all the international branch of it. So I do market research, syndicated research, customized research for client, or open research, obviously, and then also consulting. My field of expertise is mostly social business, but I'm also startup advisor, advise a few startups in Asia, and I'm also part of the Tetuan Valley Startup Accelerator program in Madrid, in Spain. And then 30% of my time is made up of going to conferences. So yeah, I do travel a lot and go. So right now I'm in London, actually, when it's sadly not snowing, but raining. So that's about me. I mean, you can learn more on my website, but I mean, you'll have all these details, I guess, on the podcast website anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of conferences, you've just been to kind of the mecca of European tech conferences, LoWeb, last week. What did you think about the event? And do you have any highlights from the conference?
Yeah, first, as a conference itself, I think it's one of the best, if not the best in the world. I've been organizing myself conferences, but I way smaller, like in Tokyo, where I lived, and still have my offices. I organized Tokyo 2.0, which is a recurring event with startups and all that's linked with the web world. And when I see that size of conference, I think we were 3,500 people or something. So it's massive and it's extremely well organized. I mean, all the trucks were almost on time. I mentioned that because usually it's never the case. The Wi-Fi is completely crazy, again, because I usually don't have any Wi-Fi in conferences when there's a lot of people. So, plus the quality of the speakers were incredible, like every year. Now, to be honest, the only thing I would say is it almost sounds like you said European conference. I would mostly say it's a US conference that happens to be in Europe, which explains its success because a lot of the people in Europe will actually want to hear from the guys from Facebook, from all these guys coming up once a year in Paris. And the good thing is that everybody is pretty neutral. So they're not on the home turf, so you can actually make a lot of connections. For me, obviously, the value I got for it was actually all the connections I've made. And seeing Loic Lemur in an Angry Birds outfit on stage, that was also quite fun, to be honest. One of the best panels I've seen was obviously, because of my own interest for Asia, was the panel in Asia. And a big surprise that I've actually seen a lot of people coming from Asia. I mean, usually it's kind of hard to see them outside of Asia. There were a few friends of mine coming from all the way from Japan. And, seeing all the trends for 2011 kind of validates what I was thinking in terms of my research. So that's nice. And I did my own panel about how to build a platform. The platform was kind of the main theme for the web, which went pretty well. It was pretty fun. I think the video was just up yesterday on YouTube. So all in all, as usual, as every year, one of the best, if not the best conference of the year.
And you mentioned about validating your points of view on what's going to happen in 2011. So could you share some light on that, or shed some light on that? What trends do you think will take hold in 2011?
But first of all, do not call me a futurist. I hate that word. I know many people like to call themselves like that. I'm just basically, I'm just witnessing or looking around to see what's going to happen next year. In terms, I mostly work with big corporations, FMCG brands, sometimes also smaller brands. I mean, besides the startups I work with, so they always ask me what are the kind of consumer behavior we'll see next year. And when I say validating, is mostly because I talk with other analysts and other consultants there than I know, from Jeremiah Owyang to Brian Solis and others, and we pretty much have the same view. There's nothing extraordinary. It's an evolution of what we've been seeing in terms of trends. I guess it's just going to be, basically, people are still going to be using social media, again, a word that I don't really like, but I mean, then people know what I'm talking about. People are going to still engage online. But what I'm mostly interested in is how companies should react to that, because up to now it was a lot of shotgun policies, shotgun processes. Like, companies were just going and doing a very quick and raw strategy, and which made absolutely no sense. For instance, you have corporations spend millions and millions of dollars or euros, whatever your currency is, on corporate websites. And for the past year, what they all done is like, hey, go on Facebook to like our page, which doesn't really make much sense. So basically, you create a website, you pour millions inside, and then you drive your people away. So these are the type of stuff that make no sense, in my opinion. You kind of have to keep your customers when you want them to be, when you actually invested your money. So these are these trends, what I meant. Otherwise, the other trends, the one I'm very big on is mobile, because obviously I lived in Japan. So there, access for the internet are mostly mobile, up to 80%. So I'm kind of seeing that everybody kind of starts to understand that it will be the case. For me, there's not even a question about if, it's just going to happen. My forecast is that by 2015 in Europe, accesses from mobile devices will actually surpass the ones from desktop devices. So this is also something that I do research about, because consumer behavior, what people are doing, will actually obviously impact how do you sell stuff online, or how do you actually present a website, or how do you create your own podcast, for instance. I mean, it depends on how people react on the other side of your channel. You have to adapt your strategy. So this is what I meant by trends.
A topic that we have to touch on, since you've already mentioned it twice, but Japan. And you have it's a very obvious passion for Japan. So could you elaborate on the origins and where that was born from?
Well, I'm kind of awkward. I'm an oddball in that thing. Because most people, when you talk about Japan, either had this passion from very young. They were reading anime, or interested in Japanese culture, or went to university to do Japanese studies, or fell in love with the Japanese girls. I see a lot of guys who do that. For me, it was almost an accident. Basically, I landed there. When I say almost by accident, it was obviously a decision, but I had an interest in Japan, but I'd never had any passion beforehand. I went there one day, I remember it was in June, and in the next 12 hours after I landed, I said, oh, this is my favorite city in the world. And it remained such, like, since then. And also this is where actually I created, it's a big word. Actually, I started what I'm doing now as a consultant, as an analyst, because I had dreams that I could land in Tokyo and find a job very quickly. Even though I did 6-month crash course of Japanese, it was obviously not enough. So I ended up creating my own business, because said, okay, let's shape Tokyo the way I want it to be. Let's shape my world how we want it to be. So I became an entrepreneur in Tokyo, in a city I love. So yeah, the passion it's a more of a childish type of passion, because I was there and I was discovering everything, and I had big eyes. I was, holy, wow, this is so cool. So and I saw all these trends, but not only about technology, not only because people tend to see Japan as a very advanced country in terms of technology, which is not always true. I mean, it's a different ecosystem, but I think that you can learn a lot from Japan and Asia as a whole for the rest of the world, which is what I'm trying to do. But obviously my passion is deeper than that. It goes from everything to the people, the culture. And since then, I've been trying to read and Not in Japanese yet, sadly. I'm still learning it. It's a long process. Maybe let's do a podcast in 10 years.